The following was recorded in front of a live studio audience at the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe. This is the United Podcast Network.
Welcome to the Quirky Dog Podcast, inspired by some of the quirkiest dogs you can ever imagine and the owners who love them. This podcast is brought to you by the quirky couple themselves, Scott and Jess Williams. Their aim is to educate and entertain. Here's Scott and Jess.
Welcome, guys, and happy Wednesday. We hope that you had a very nice holiday with your families. And today we are filming 2022 Dog of the Year. I'm super excited about this one. And we have an in-person Dog of the Year guest. This is such a treat. This is awesome. We had that much talent this close to Salem, New Hampshire, so we had to go with it. But first, we're going to start with the quirky tip of the day.
You want me to honk that thing?
I want you to be the honker. All right, my quirky tip of the day is, did Christie get excited? Christie's our Dog of the Year. You'll learn about that in a sec. But the quirky tip of the day is if you guys live in, southern New Hampshire, northern Mass type of area, and you're looking for dog training, please look at Fox Hill Farm Dog Training. Andy and his beautiful wife, Bridget, own Fox Hill Farm Dog Training. They have a huge, high-caliber level of training, and please check them out. We would highly, highly recommend them. And they are colleagues of ours, but we're blessed to send clients to them whenever we can. So, Dog of the Year.
Yeah, no, it's exciting, and one of my favorite breeds.
Yes,
Belgian
the Belgian Malinois. So the Dog of the Year is Andy's dog, Christie. She's a Belgian Malinois, and she went to Greece this year, right? It was kind of a big deal.
Yeah, it was for the FMBB. It was in Greece.
Is that called IPO still? What's the new?
IGP.
IGP.
IGP is the new one for now.
Right.
Maybe next year.
We'll switch it up.
So it's a protection sport, in case anyone doesn't know.
Yeah.
And it's tough traveling to Greece. I mean, it's a whole different set of problems when you do that. But to get there, we competed at some pretty big competitions to qualify for it. Against some really good competition. So
and you guys really kicked ass in Greece. Let me just say this. You had the highest obedience score of all the Americans, didn't you?
Yeah. And,
let's kick
and you were sick too, I heard.
Yes, that was part of the problem. We definitely did well. The obedience was awesome. To me, that was the first day we truly clicked, but it was the last day we were there, unfortunately. So protection and tracking didn't really go as well as we would have liked, but
you still had respectable scores considering. I mean,
the tracking with the conditions, happy with where we were at. It was just the perfect track for us not to do as well as we could have done.
Yeah.
And protection, she showed amazing. Unfortunately, I didn't have a voice.
Yeah, so let's talk about that aspect of it.
Calling a dog out or, out of the blind or telling it to out is a little tough.
A little bit trickier
without a voice.
Yeah, great time to get laryngitis.
Yes, exactly.
So your daughter Emma, she had laryngitis first. Is that what happened?
Yes.
You just brought it home from school, germ cesspool at school. Okay,
yes,
so
exactly.
How far was this before you were leaving to go compete in Greece?
It was probably the week before we were leaving, but she's a kid and she bounced back like that, so no one thought anything of it. And then me and Sean were leaving about a week before the competition started. As soon as we were leaving, Bridget got it as well, and we're like, "Ooh, this
isn't great."
Yeah, but didn't really think that much of it, and got down there and we did a couple days of training, and then did our practice day. And later that night after practice, I'm like, this feels a little funny. Not really sure what's going on here. Yeah. And the next day for tracking, zero voice at all.
Yeah.
And, we're in Greece. I don't know what any of the language is. I'm trying to find medication. It was
a lot.
I'm stopping on the side of the road, buying honey and drinking it. Anything you could possibly do.
Yeah.
How many days ahead of time did you get there?
Just not as far as I should have been. And that's one of the things I really learned about this. We were there.
Barely enough time to get acclimated to the new time.
Right. 4 days before practice, I think, or 3 days before practice, something like that. 5 or 6 days before the actual competition. And, for a big competition like this, I wouldn't do it without being there a full week before anything starts, it's just too difficult.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a big time commitment with the flying and everything.
Yeah, it's in the temperature, like the elevation, just everything. Like it took way longer than expected to deal with that stuff.
Yeah.
And the protection was tricky based on your voice, right? Like that was just,
Yeah,
it was very hard for you to project.
Yeah, if it wasn't for that, I mean, I would have been a complete different.
Yeah, because she's a very biddable dog. We saw her a little bit before you left at a seminar, and like she's a very nice working dog. She's not really out to screw you. It doesn't seem.
No, she's totally like, we have a great relationship as far as that stuff goes. Like, I think she's definitely done some screwing of people before. But she understands it really well, and the way we train everything, like she's
clear.
She's clear on it, and she's a dog that I expect to go out, bar something really bizarre happening, getting a huge protection score. That's the one.
One thing you feel solid about. Yeah.
And I mean, obedience too. I think everyone always worries about tracking, but in the stadium, which is obedience and protection, like I feel really comfortable with her by my side anytime.
Yeah, but this was a pretty big venue for you, like as a competitor.
I would think it's the biggest.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I haven't done anything like that.
Yeah, like you were
It was
kind of a newbie on the international field at this point.
Yeah, and like I said, that to me, that's the biggest difference. Like we don't travel a lot.
Yeah.
We're pretty, stuck on with our business, and like we don't go out and do stuff. So to fly over there, I didn't realize how much it would take out of me.
Yeah.
And then just everything else. Yeah, I mean, it was difficult in that regard. That was the hardest part about the whole thing.
Yeah.
You should have tried some ouzo. That's that Greek liquor.
I think
get you straightened
so.
up.
Actually, for
that's probably why I felt better.
for draw night, where you draw, like when you go for protection, obedience, and tracking, it was your number was on the bottom of a little shot of that. And, I think it's kind of like a tradition that you take that shot before tracking, because that's the phase everyone is always
ready to drink
losing their mind about,
Definitely. So how was the experience overall? Like you're talking about draw night. It was one of your first international competitions. Like how did the competition unfold? How was it run? Like just kind of your general consensus of that outside of the competing part.
Yeah, I mean, it was run great. It was super cool to see, all these people. And
how many competitors roughly?
Probably 100.
Yeah, worldwide.
Yeah, and it's 5 or 6, of the top competitors from each big country.
How many were on the American team?
It was originally 6, and then 2 ended up pulling and not going. So I believe there was 4 of us.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Sean,
it's not a lot of showing considering 100 people out there. Just 4 representing USA.
Yeah,
there's only so many per team too.
Yeah,
but you were short a couple.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So talk about Sean a little bit, because you had mentioned him flying over there. I just want people to understand that Sean has been your decoy, your training decoy. Just when you mentioned that name, because I'm sure it'll pop up again.
Sean works for us with our training business. He first bought a German Shepherd from us probably 8 or 9 years ago.
Long time ago now,
we've known Sean since he couldn't drive.
Yeah.
And
now you make sure he can't leave.
Yes, exactly.
Now you lock him in.
Yes. He did 99% of all of the decoy work with Christie.
Yeah.
Leading up to it, in preparation of it, and he ended up going, with us to Greece to help make sure everything was as spot on as we could get it for the for the competition.
And they had a training field for you, I'm sure, but you can't do open field on the trial field.
Right.
That's the difference between this and the sport I was involved in.
Right. You get 5 minutes of training on the real field.
Right.
So, in protection and obedience, but it's run a little different than most of the national competitions. And when you are on the field at the international competition, there's no equipment allowed either, whatsoever. So
You mean like tugs and that kind of stuff? Reward
you
toys?
can have reward toys.
Oh, no, like pinch collar or
anything that could be even considered aversive.
Right.
Well,
certainly your voice wasn't.
Your voice was very nice.
So. But yeah, you don't get the time. I mean, pretty much everyone uses their practice time in obedience to show where the send out is when you send the dog away from you. And in protection, you just want to get that one set running around all 6 blinds so that they know where the hot blind is.
I have a question. What was your tracking surface like there? Was it comparable to what you do where you live?
No, not even close.
Because
I still don't know what we were actually on. Some sort of variation of alfalfa, but it didn't smell like alfalfa.
Yeah.
But it was a very, from the road, it looks like thick.
Right.
That's what all tracking ends up looking like. You get into it and you're like...
More sparse.
Very sparse.
Yeah.
And I think they water the fields at night, for the
Let all that aroma start to rise.
Yeah, for all the actual crop. By the time we tracked, I mean, it was bone dry, couldn't see anything. It was tough.
I bet that's stressful.
Until we got there, we hadn't been on
Come
anything.
here.
Christie, on anything like that.
So Christie's here, if you guys didn't know. She's just hanging out and on the ground lower.
When I lived in Southern California and I was doing Schutzen, maybe, 20 years ago, there is no fields of grass out there. Everything's dead.
Yeah.
So people are out there walking through dirt.
Yeah.
And there's just footprints everywhere.
Yeah.
And then if you travel to another state,
You have grass.
all of a sudden you got, 18 inches of whatever.
Right.
And it's a whole different experience.
Yeah, and that's one of the tough things. I mean, we have nothing like that anywhere remotely around here.
You got to go to the dump.
Yeah. I knew we were going to have some issues, replicating it. We were trying to track on more of a dirt type field because the way the vegetation is, you almost got to
do hard surface just to be prepped for the sparse.
Exactly. The dog's not really tracking the vegetation. It's almost like a distraction to them. They need to be down deep on whatever surface that is.
Yeah.
There's tons of little, I don't know if there are mole holes all over the track too.
And they're peeping out and looking.
Well, she's pretty excitable about
Little
animals.
stuff,
That doesn't even have to be little. If she smells a deer on the track,
she
any of
gets
that
going.
stuff, it's definitely something that winds her up a little bit. So, like I said before, putting all of this stuff together, it was just kind of like the perfect track for us to have a little bit of struggling on.
So to put it in perspective, you have articles you have to find. How many articles were in the track?
There's 3 articles.
And how many hundreds of feet is the track? It's yards, right?
It's supposed to be 600 yards.
That's a lot
it's a
of
long,
track.
It's a long area to
lot of
cover.
track.
And it's completely different than your police dog tracking, anything like that.
No, this is very meticulous tracking.
Natural for a dog, it should lift up its head, figure out where everything's going on, and then get back to the track. That's normal. That's what a police dog would do. This is trained obedience, put your nose in each footstep. That's what it is. It's not.
Yeah, and the 6 football fields, that's a lot of distance.
Yeah. At the international and national competitions, they definitely can be a little smaller than what it's actually supposed to be.
But the surface is so challenging that it makes
right.
up for it that way.
We were in the mountains.
Yeah.
So elevation-wise,
there's a lot going on there.
Yeah, it was tough. I mean, the sun, just everything. It was supposed to be 70 degrees, but I've never felt 70 degrees like I did in Greece. I don't know what's up with the sun there. It's a total.
It's no New England.
No.
It's reflecting off the ancient ruins.
And leading up to that, we hadn't had a training session where I didn't wear a sweatshirt. That's the weather we were having here.
Yeah.
So to get over there to something that different was
big difference.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, babe, when did you meet Andy when you got here? When did when do you remember?
I think it was you came to my little bite work we did with some and put your dog on upper body on me. And that was in...
you were in Boxford then?
No, we were at that little place in Andover.
Oh, Andover, the Bedbug Palace?
Yeah. We had a little field there.
Yeah.
And I think that's where I first met you.
Yes.
And then I saw you again working with Salamini. He had a little
Yep.
Yeah,
thing
that's
we
where
did.
I had met. That's where I
Yeah.
met Andy. He was doing a decoy competition or a decoy seminar kind of thing there, and we had a little Jag Terrier. So were you always involved in the protection, or you kind of got involved in it?
You were
within
in
the
the
last
reptiles
decade?
when I first
yeah,
met
like,
you.
Yes.
How did that transform for you?
Fighting reptiles.
Yes, exactly. So it kind of worked out. But no, as far as working dog goes, like I've always been around them, not necessarily biting working dogs, but I grew up, my mom bred Huskies.
Okay.
They bite.
Yeah. They bite and they run away.
Ours were just other animals, but yeah, like the running away part, like,
that was a thing.
like we used to go out, we had a ton of woods and we'd dog sled and, they'd knock us off and we wouldn't see the dogs for quite some time, and we're miles out in the woods and this big long walk home, like to go get the snowmobiles to go try to find the dogs.
You were always in the real world of dogs.
Yes, we didn't have a pet dog until I was.
And in spite of that,
17.
you still wanted to get involved with dogs.
yes. So had always been around dogs, breeding dogs, all of that sort of thing. But I think the actual working dog, protection dog, like that type of dog, your Shepherds, your Malinois, that stuff, it was probably when I was 21, 22.
Is that when you got indoctrinated with the Boston PD?
Yes.
That was a good, you jumped right in with both feet.
Yes.
That's a lot of work.
That's kind of how I started out doing most of the protection stuff was with, police dogs, and just kind of took off from there. At first I started decoying just to try to learn from the other side of the leash, and then once I did it, I was
hooked.
Yeah, I want to do this part. You know?
And your foundation with protection dogs prior to Christie has been German Shepherds, right?
Yeah, I mean, we've had some Malinois that we had placed on the police.
Yeah, but you have liked Shepherds more than Malinois previously, right?
Absolutely.
Because Scott said this to me. He's like, "Oh my God, I can't believe Andy has a Malinois." And then when Noelle was here and he mentioned it to you, you're like, "Yeah, I know. I finally caved." So you vehemently felt very strongly about the Malinois as a breed.
Yes, and I had them, and I like working them. I loved the dogs.
Yeah,
loved them.
Yeah.
Didn't want to own one.
Living with them, I was always ecstatic when it was time for them to move on to their police department. I don't, and I still kind of wonder, is it the lines? Is it just the way they were, raised? Or I believe it's the lines completely. Mm-hmm. I don't think it's the way they were raised.
I tend to agree with you.
But 4 years ago, you said you're going to have Malinois, you're going to compete with them, and you're going to breed them.
And you're going to love it.
There's no way. No way.
Yeah.
I still remember when Bridget's like, we should get Malinois.
And you're like, maybe we should get a divorce.
We were done with this 4 years ago. We said we were never going to have another Malinois in this house again, And I had a bad attitude about it until I got
a pretty
her.
strong feeling.
Yeah, I did. I loved the dogs. I just didn't want to live with one.
Yeah, so you acquired her. She was older then. She wasn't a puppy, it sounds like. Okay.
Yeah,
and so how did that all come to be? Just why was she different for you? Let's just say it that way.
Well, the interesting part about it is, to me, I wanted a puppy. I wanted a male puppy.
You got an adult female.
Right. So yeah, that's kind of how it went. I was looking at puppies everywhere. Originally, I was going to get something from the U.S. just because I couldn't. Christie.
Yeah. She just wants to take her ball and go.
Yeah.
She's going to go lay on the couch.
I couldn't find what I wanted.
Yeah.
I was looking, and then, when I decided to do something, I spent all my time trying to research it and whatever, I wasn't finding the lines I liked, the dogs I liked. And then when I did find it, I was having issues with the person.
Who you want to get it from?
Kind of, yeah. It was just surprising stuff. With the Shepherds, I competed at a couple nationals, and Bridget had competed at I don't even know how many nationals.
Yeah, you guys are well known in the world.
Yeah, 5 or 6 years at least of nationals for her, and we weren't just starting out people
Newbies,
looking
yeah,
for
yeah.
a working dog,
Yeah.
and people are wanting me to like fill out whether I like a crate or not on like
Yeah.
a form to get a Malinois puppy,
you're
and
kinda
I'm like I don't know how I feel about this.
Sounds like you actually were talking to some reputable breeders.
Absolutely, but
I mean, you get one on Craigslist, they don't care where it's
right.
going.
No, and I agree with that completely. But then, if I'm going to be
The
spending
shoe
my
wasn't-
money,
The
if
shoe
you,
wasn't fitting. The shoe wasn't fitting.
yeah, it was
Yeah.
just more like, if I'm going to be investing myself into this dog from you,
Yeah, you should
and
know.
you do feel this strongly about it, why don't you just look at my Facebook? I contacted you through that,
Yeah,
and,
yeah.
You see
and
what- the
we
work
could
you're
maybe
doing.
skip some of
bullshit.
this other stuff.
Yeah.
And then I feel like there was also stuff with, I don't know how people take this. If I buy a dog, I believe it's my dog.
Yeah.
Right?
we like
this
that
is
mentality
my
too,
dog.
yeah.
Like, I just spent this money. It's my dog. So if I buy a dog, I want the papers. If
basic things.
I buy a dog and it doesn't work out, I can make the decision of what's
you wanna
right
do.
now for
Right.
this dog because I
Yeah.
know this dog better than you.
Yeah. No, it's true.
So, and these are some amazing breeders, but they have like this mentality of like protecting stuff a little more than I feel like I'm into.
Well, it's funny you say that because my Border Collie, Jimmy, there's a lot of, anyway, same thing with all the co-ownership and all that.
Yeah,
Yeah,
there's
like
a lot of that.
it was just like way too much. Like
Yeah.
this is now I paid for it. If it's different if you give it to me.
Yeah,
it could be our dog.
Yeah.
But I paid for it.
Yeah.
Like this is now my dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
So it just wasn't working out with that. So how did she become available? Were you then looking for an adult dog when the puppy scene wasn't working
no.
as well?
So
Okay.
now I'm outside of the U.S. looking in Europe,
Okay.
and there
Where
was-
all the good dogs come from, for anyone listening, honestly, of all breeds right now.
So I'm, kind of focused on this one male, maybe two males, but the one male is the father, and then the male I really wanted from is the son. And they just started breeding them, and I knew of two puppies or one puppy that was already coming over, and I was trying to get the brother. That was going to be coming with, and
This is from Czech Republic. Or,
this
no.
could have been Slovakia.
Yeah.
The dog itself lived in Hungary, but had been getting some breedings. There was also another breeding I was looking at from the Czech Republic from the same male. Super nice breeding, but that was ended up being all girls. So nothing on that one. And then the next litter, when they finally decided that the dog could actually be mine, it got like wormed like that day and
Yep.
died.
Oh my God, it was not meant
So
to be.
I
All of
was
these
like,
things.
I don't know
Wait.
what's going on.
Yeah.
Like, I felt like
maybe I should have cats.
yeah, like I'm done with this pretty much, and it's not for me. I'm not going to get a dog from this male. The next day, I was tracking, and I'm checking like the working dog all the time, looking for dogs. That's the European one, and she came available for sale, and she's that dog that
Bloodline.
I wanted.
Yeah.
Only female.
She's the sister.
Oh, okay, great.
Just the plain sister.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, I can't get my puppy. I'm going to make myself a puppy.
Yeah.
I'm not finding what I want. It's not going the way I want. I'll make myself a puppy from her. So the second I saw it, I contacted him. And then I'm like looking at some video, and I'm like,
Pretty nice dog.
really nice,
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're telling me how amazing everything is. And, with her.
Of course, you
and-
take that with a grain of salt.
Well, absolutely. I've bought a lot of dogs, a lot for police departments, and I've been
Unpleasantly surprised a time or two.
a significant amount of time.
Yeah.
Maybe even more often than not.
Yes, that's probably a good way to describe it. Like to me, if there's a dog for sale, there's generally a reason.
Yeah. Yeah. But you're generally thinking it can at least work in the field it's being sold
Right.
to work in. Yeah.
Right. So, that's kind of how it all went, and I was kind of not sure, but very interested.
At least you knew the genetics.
Right. Well,
Hopefully they were real.
in the genetics, like love the genetics, but getting an older female to, come live with at the time she was 4-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
Like, it's like, this isn't the way I wanted to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
But I don't know how else I'm going to get these genetics if I don't get her.
So it was kind of like a consolation prize. Like she was a channel to you getting your male puppy, really, is the bottom line.
That was the
That's the way you
intention
were
at the
thinking about
time,
it.
and that's what I told, the owners of it. I was upfront with them.
Yeah.
And she turned out to be almost more than you could handle.
Well, and so, they're telling me this is this and this is that. And I'm like, okay, that's great. I'm hoping to believe them. But again, I've been, unpleasantly surprised many times.
You're living in reality of working dogs.
Yeah, in my mind, okay, well, the genetics are there. I just have to find the right male, and we can do what we want.
Well, let me ask you this. How did she work off the plane?
Coming right off the plane, everything was great. She was rock solid, brought her home.
Because I'm sure you've seen many that takes a friggin' week for them to settle in.
So put her in the house and, just like amazing dog. And I'm like, okay, well, this is a stable female. With the genetics I want, this is a really good start.
Yeah.
The next day I brought her down to our training building. I pulled the ball out and I'm like, and we played a little bit and I'm like, okay, well, we're going to have to reevaluate this plan because this is the dog.
Right.
This is the
Oh,
dog.
I just got chills.
Like I still have videos of the first time I worked there.
Yeah.
And the second I pulled out a ball, I knew that
Like
this
that's
was
what you wanted for you.
Yeah, this was the dog. And I still had some intentions to breed her. And because I just loved the dog, wasn't, I knew exactly what she was. And then with the competing, I feel like that kind of got pushed more in the forefront for me because as I was, trying to line up, Christie, come on. As I was trying to line something up for her as far as males go, it's like, oh, this dog is amazing, blah, 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 blah.
She's getting better and better.
And, I feel like people just kind of say that about their own dog, and it's not necessarily a thing. So I'm like, I'm going to show everyone
that she actually does do what I freaking say she is. Yeah,
exactly. That she is what I say she is.
Yeah. The proof was in the pudding.
Yeah, and so that's kind of, and I mean, it doesn't matter what I'm doing with her. I just enjoy doing it.
Yeah.
So like she's that dog for me.
So last year was your first competition season, or this year? Like, were you on the field with her in 2021? Yes.
So the first competition, 2021, I did.
Okay.
The first competition was a regional competition when we were going for our 2. And we did well there. That was like my first competition with her, but that taught me like what I need to work on.
Yeah, but like, I mean, you have a very short, even competition career with this dog. Like,
Absolutely.
We're talking about like everything's been cinched into a short amount of time here.
Yeah, and then so later that year after I got the 2, I had entered and planned on doing it was a qualification trial at the time. It wasn't a national championship, but I bred her instead.
Okay.
So that kind of like knocked out the end of 2020 with her. And then in 2021, I was like, okay, we're going.
Yeah.
And the first competition I did with her, it was just getting her IGP3, was at the AWDF National Championship. So that's the all-breed national championship. And we did really well. Yeah. Like
everybody's like, "Who is this Andy?"
Yeah, no, that's definitely what happened.
By the way, I mean, he's tall, but who the hell is this guy?
Yeah.
I will say, by the way, as an aside, no one makes my husband look short, but when Andy and my husband stand next to each other, he's got presence. It's a whole nother thing.
And his dog looks like a puppy standing next to him.
Yes,
I know,
yes.
seriously. Well, and that's the thing. And I'm glad that we talked about her being bred and everything because she's knocked up again now.
Yes.
And I really appreciated the way you described this when we were there for Noelle's last episode about how much thought process goes into breeding Malinois for you. I think you even used the term or the phrase I'm up a whole week before because I know that I'm putting all these little creatures on the ground. And I value that so much, and I want you to talk to that point a little bit. But Andy knows he's been breeding working dogs his whole life. He's dealt with real dogs his whole life. Breeding Malinois seemed like a whole nother layer of responsibility. And I love that you treat this with that.
Right. So the big thing about that is, again, just like I said 4 years ago, like if you said I was going to be having Malinois, I would have said you were crazy.
Yeah.
If you told me I'd be breeding them, I'd tell you you're just absolutely insane.
Yeah.
And that's just of the fact of where the dogs end up.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's a pretty big problem right now in our country, particular, where, you know, people are breeding for like high drive dogs, and then there's something in the litter that's not really that high drive, and they're like, oh, well, that's a pet.
Yeah.
But it's not.
Yeah, no, Mal's are,
Christie.
as she's going to go tag somebody down there.
So, Christie,
Babe, go
come
get
on.
her. She's coming. She's got her big flexi.
Yeah.
That was good timing, Christie.
Yeah.
Good girl.
So,
no, it's true. And I'm so glad that we brought this up and we're speaking to this point that, like, even if it's a lower drive, like, so kind of dog, it's a dog that is not your normal pet dog or not your normal working dog or something else. Where are you going? Oh, you got the flexi. I'm
the flexi.
Did Scott fall down the stairs? What's happening?
So to me, one of the big things is, even if we may not have necessarily the drives that we want to see in the dog for like top sport work, I still see a lot of fight in them.
Yes.
So
And they have a lot of intelligence, and they have a big bite. If no one is aware of that with a Mal.
Yeah, like a washout sport dog is still 10 times more than a
Most people want to deal with.
Yes,
it wants in its home. So that's the hard part. And then, you know, you look at the breed in general, and then you have like your people who don't work them, and they are just breeding them to sell them, and they're not health testing. They're not doing any of this stuff, and people are buying them. So now the breed's looking even worse. And it's always been this huge thing for me. Like, okay, well, I know about breeding. I've been around all different types of breeding my entire life. Do I want to breed Malinois? Because they're not for everyone.
Yeah.
Well, yes, I do, but I need to make sure they go into the right place. There's a million extra Malinois in the world.
Yes, yes.
But that doesn't mean I shouldn't breed good ones.
Yeah, no, it's true.
And that's what it comes down to. Like, if the good breeders don't breed good dogs,
we're not going to have good dogs.
Yeah, we're not going to have good Malinois. So
Yeah.
just because there's a lot of bad Malinois in the world doesn't mean good ones should be bred. And it took me a while to get there.
Yeah.
That was the realization that I really needed to figure out and learn for myself.
Yeah.
Because, you know, just because all these people can't do them, like if the good breeders aren't breeding them, the breed itself will be totally different, and it's just not going to be what it should be.
No, it's true. And I just want you guys to realize that, I mean, Andy and Bridget are very well versed in the protection world. They're very well versed in dogs with strong genetics, and they're taking it so seriously, and it's such a commitment. And I just really valued you coming from that perspective, because I 100% agree with any dog with drive, but with Malinois, it is like another category. It's different than breeding German Shepherds.
Yeah, it really is. And even your high drive Shepherds, like, honestly, I prefer, and this is again from certain lines, I prefer to have a high drive Malinois than a real high drive Shepherd on some of these ones. I actually think they're better in the head.
Yeah.
You know, than some of the highest drive Shepherds. I feel like they have a better off switch from certain lines.
I see what you're saying.
This isn't across the board, but I feel like Malinois, they're almost breeding a little more similar to what a Shepherd would be.
Yeah.
And I feel like Shepherds are breeding
A little more to like what a Malinois would be, yeah.
Yeah, it's really weird. Like,
Yeah.
now you're seeing these giant Malinois that
lot of
do
change.
have good off switch and all of this drive and all of this stuff. And then you're seeing like these little tiny Shepherds that are like
Real twitchy.
yeah. You know, so it's a really weird thing. But I in general, I would say if you're looking for a dog that does have an off switch that has a ton of drive, I would point you in the Malinois direction rather than the Shepherd direction, more often than not now.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. And she's had one litter. She's going to have this next litter. Was she a good mom the first time?
She was great for a certain amount of time.
She was ready to have the brat
and
sleeve.
She definitely was ready for them to be done with them earlier than I would have been ready for her to be done with them, because as soon as she's done,
Yeah, somebody else has to step in.
Yeah, now it's all my work.
Yeah.
So, you know, she's crazy to work, and you know, she could have really given me another week. Like, she should have given me another week with these puppies, but she's a great mom, you know, as far as mothering and all that stuff. She was just, you know, done with them a little earlier than I would have liked for them to be.
And what about with Emma? How is she with Emma in the house? Because Emma's what, 6 now?
Emma's 6. She's going on 7, and she's amazing with Emma.
And that's just been that way since day one, kind of?
Yeah, since day one. I mean, I could, you know, if Emma was here, I could give her the ball and she would, you know, heel around for her and lay down and do all of this stuff. And, you know, there's videos of us 2 weeks out of like national competition of Emma playing with her and doing obedience with her, like right before the competition. You know, she's super. Got
a lot of balance.
Yeah. I mean, she's completely balanced. And that's not to say this dog's perfect in the house. She's not. Like,
no, it's still work.
If there's like, you know, a meatloaf on the counter, like, she's gonna eat it. Like, it just is. Like, the second I turn around, that meatloaf is gone, you know? And when she first comes out, even, you know, 6 weeks pregnant, she's, you know,
ready to go.
Yeah,
she's
like
doing the mouth dance.
Running around on the furniture and bouncing off the walls until she gets herself settled. But compared to a lot of other high drive dogs, like, it's really minor stuff that I don't have any sort of issue with.
A little side note for you with my dog, who is 9.
Oh boy, here he goes.
And we've created. Because he spins in his crate.
Yeah.
Right. So then his tail's getting messed up.
Yeah.
And we've gone through all these different things to stop it, treat it, fix it. Now we have him in a Great Dane crate, and he's still started that again. Now we put Primo pads on the walls
He's
of
like
the crate.
living in a padded cell. He's living. It's working. We'll show pictures early 2023.
I mean,
but
it's always the troubleshooting.
It's literally like a joke now.
Yeah.
Like, he's
How
in
much
his
work
padded
can we
cell.
give this dog to get him to actually rest? And all you do is build endurance. And then he's like, okay, I've had my 5 minutes of rest. Like, what are we going to do now?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And, you know, I actually talk about the same thing with our pet people all the time. Like, you know, you can't just go out there and throw a chucket for your dog for an hour and
then expect it to be done for the day.
So next time you do it, he wants an hour and a half. You know, like, you're just building a better athlete, and you're like creating an adrenaline junkie.
It's
true. We need to do something a little different.
More
it's not
structured,
just, it's not just physical exercise here, because that's what ends up happening. You know?
it's true. And
a crazy athlete you wind up with.
And Malinois, they are born more that way, but you can make a doodle like that. That's a good point to bring up. So what are the qualities about her, just for our standpoint, and just because we've made her Dog of the Year at this point? And I mean, just to reference that also, like, the first time we did Dog of the Year, we did Petra Ford's Lab, Zeal. He was an amazing obedience dog. Last year, we had Perry DeWitt and Jessa Ju and their dogs. I think we did Hallelujah and Verb, but all of their dogs are amazing in agility. Like, I mean, she is a standout in protection and IGP right now, which is truly why we wanted to highlight Andy. We like Andy, but I really wanted to bring light to how amazing this dog is, especially as a Malinois, because they're not always easy keepers. They're not always the whole package. So what are the qualities about her that you really like, just adore, and that made it like those first few moments that you were playing ball with her, like, oh yeah, this is what I want. This is it.
I mean, her drive for a toy is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, which isn't abnormal for a Malinois, but this is like a different level of it.
Yeah, it's pretty extreme. I held the toy to get the ears for the photo, and then I released her the ball, and she slams hard.
Yeah,
Emma's got a lot of good mechanics if she's working her.
You know, she's drive-wise, it's amazing, but personality too. Like, she's totally comfortable going into a new place where that isn't normal for her, and she's just rock solid fine. You know, she has like a twitchiness to her, like extreme, like, I have to do that as fast as possible. A lot of times with dogs like that, you get some social nerve, some environmental nerve,
definitely.
and she doesn't have that. Like, she's the perfect cross between both of her parents. Her mother's a little bit of a twitchier dog, maybe leaning on the nervier side, like more nerve about different stuff, and her father is just like this amazing, like, like
Steady.
old soul, steady dog, but in protection, he's like a
total monster.
Monster in protection, but everywhere else, you're like, is this a
Yeah.
Malinois?
Right,
Like, you
just
got some
calm.
What's in there?
Yeah.
Like, you know, like stuff you wouldn't even recognize. And she's like the cross between that. Like, she's like go, 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 but still good enough that, you know, I wouldn't feel weird letting her sleep with my 6-year-old daughter.
Yeah.
Like, there's just, she's super
very
good
special,
about that.
it sounds like.
That's unique.
And then with a female Malinois too, there's resilience and like a hardness that's not normal whatsoever.
Yeah.
Like,
And with that tracking and those distances, obviously you weren't running into her just checking out at like just quitting.
right.
Because some dogs will do that too.
especially your Malinois, like they're very sight orientated.
Right, so they
and
just get
like,
bored, like, what the fuck?
Yeah, exactly. Like you're 100 yards in and they get a little bored and your dog's like coming back for hugs or whatever, you know,
Exactly what
or
I'm thinking.
chasing a butterfly
Yeah.
or whatever.
Yeah.
But she
sticks with it.
Her work ethic sounds like it's
work
exceptional.
ethic isn't. Yeah, it's kind of second to none. And then, you know, she's IGP is a sport of like drilling,
Yeah.
but then you come to the point where your dog's overworked and
You're over-drilled.
You have to like bring exuberance and drive back in. But this is a dog I've never had to build drive with.
Yeah.
After like a
All of it.
lot of like
Repetition.
training
Yeah.
and like
Pattern training and
we could do
repetition
all
and, yeah.
3 phases every single day, and I don't have to go back in and build drive with the dog.
That is pretty amazing. Yeah.
And everything's like so precision based that there's also some consequence that comes into play.
Yeah.
When you're training for that last like half a point.
Polishing.
Yeah, like, and when you're doing that, like, you know,
You don't want to blow up the whole apple cart.
right. But she is, yeah, I messed up. That's totally fine. We move on. There is no like holding anything.
Yeah, she's forgiving.
There's no. She's a very strong female.
She spoiled you.
Well, that's the issue at
Yeah.
this point.
was
And
gonna
that's
say,
why
yeah.
she's pregnant right now. And that's why, you know, she's a unicorn of a dog. And now I have to try to.
Make a unicorn.
Right, because I'm
Yeah.
totally ruined for other dogs now at this point.
I know. Well, that's the thing. Because, I mean, theoretically, are you planning on competing with her in 2023?
No.
Okay. So you took her to Greece and this year, and this was kind of
Yeah,
her
I mean,
last big competition year, you think?
physically, she absolutely could.
Yeah.
But I had to make the decision, okay, if I continue to compete, how long is that going to be at a top level and still be able to retire without like injury?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
you know, we're
It's a
looking
fine line
at,
here with years, I understand.
like-
and the breeding again.
Yeah, like, okay, so that's an 8-year-old dog in my mind. If you got anything more than that and you were still competing at a high level, like that's
Exceptional.
pretty, right, it's
Yeah.
pretty out there. But that still only gives me like another year.
Yeah.
So what am I going to do in that year and what's more useful for the breed
Yeah.
and for me?
Yeah.
And that's to try to get,
Yeah, I don't blame you.
So she's kind of your foundation dog now.
yeah, that's exactly what it comes down to.
So are you looking to keep a male or a female out of this litter, or you're open?
Definitely female.
Okay. Oh, look at him. He's all switched over.
Yeah.
And I want to bring light to that real quick, too, that the protection world is largely filled with competing males.
Right.
Like like
People
you
don't wanna
guys
deal
have
with
to
those, heat cycles
understand
and all
that
that.
to compete
Right.
with a bitch is very difficult, because if you want to keep the dog intact, like you're going to be missing things with being in season when they're bred, and just a lot of people I do think prefer males in protection also for some reason or whatever. But like it is even more exceptional that she has achieved such great lengths in her career as a female dog, and I just want people to know that aren't familiar with protection.
Well, it's not that females aren't capable; they don't get the shot. People don't put the
Yeah.
time
Yeah.
into them.
It's really tough. And I mean, honestly, I feel like obedience on a female, like the right dog, is better.
Yeah.
Like, you know, when you run into your issues, it's more on the protection side. But then you have a whole nother set of issues. Like if I'm going to a big competition and she's in heat, which is what a dog does to you because it's a dog. So, you know, worst case scenario, they're in heat when you go to the big competition. You're doing all your phases
At
at
the
the end of the competition because you're not allowed out there. You can't even practice out there. So
Yeah.
everyone else may be doing one phase a day, you know, tracking this day, obedience this day, protection this day. if your female's in heat, like, you're doing your practice, for obedience and protection, and then now you're expected to go out and compete in obedience and now protection all in the same day.
Yeah, it's a
at
whole
the end of
nother
the
ballgame.
trial.
Yeah.
So, it's
a lot more challenging.
Yeah, it definitely has its own set of things, but I feel like I get along a little better with female dogs, especially raising them.
Yep.
I'm more forgiving.
Yeah.
Like I could just let stuff slide a little easier than I would with a male dog. And I mean, I think it's the same thing with my daughter. Like if I had a son, I'd be like, let's do some push-ups. Let's do this right now. Like you got to learn to hit someone and tackle and, do all of this stuff. At 6 years old, my daughter, I'm like, oh, let's brush your hair.
Yeah.
You're so cute. Like,
It's FT.
yeah, let's do some nails. And, it's just a total different thing.
Wait till she brings home a boyfriend. Well, now it's going to be a whole different Andy popping
yes,
up.
exactly. But,
Have you met my dog?
yeah.
She's a badass female.
So, just when I'm raising them from puppies with a male, I have to be real careful to not take too much power from the dog young.
Yeah.
Is kind of where it is.
You guys are similar trainers, it sounds like.
With females, like it just naturally happens because I'm more forgiving. But with a male dog, I have to be so conscious of what I do. I feel like because I'm just a little
Too hard.
little bit.
Yeah. Is there anything that we missed with her? I mean, I didn't even know she was retiring this year, so I'm super grateful that we have chosen to do this for 2022. Because, I mean, it was just exceptional, you guys going out to Greece, and Bridget and Emma actually went out and saw them compete at the end, and it was just such a cool experience, and them being so close. I wanted to have them on in person. But is there anything about Christie or your journey together that we missed that you also want to bring light to or say about her?
I mean, she's
just the best.
she is the dog of the year. She really is, and I'm not that type of person. I'm really not.
He is like the most humble person I've ever met. I swear.
And if you're looking for a pet home, Malinois, don't call in.
I'm hoping that's completely opposite of what we're gonna have here. I'm doing everything I can for it not to be that. But if you want to hear like the truth about any of my dogs, I have no problem telling it to you. Like I'm harder on the reality of what my dog is than anyone I know.
Well, I appreciate what you're saying about you believe it's the genetics that creates that dog, because I've had some very strong genetics that I've raised with my kids, and when they got to be about 18 months, they couldn't be with they were just too much.
Yeah.
They matured, they started getting strong.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I was concerned about they grew up just hanging out together.
Yeah.
And then they get a certain age and they're like, I have a zero tolerance for this friggin' kid, or you know, it's like, what the hell?
Yeah, and for me, she's the perfect dog.
Yeah.
Obviously she's for sale. She was for sale when I bought her for a reason.
Yeah.
She had the best training she could possibly get in, to me, one of the best countries for IGP. Like
They didn't want to deal with a female.
Well,
Maybe.
they competed her to one with a top trainer, but there was some issues.
She was meant to be your dog. That's the bottom line. Universally, she was meant to be.
She was wild. They couldn't polish
her.
Everything together.
And maybe it was because of her age too. Who knows?
A little bit. And from what I understand, and this is an amazing trainer, they felt like they would go out and train, and they would work on the same stuff, and then they would end in a good place, and the next day they would get up and start in the same place they started the day before. Nothing.
But it hasn't been your experience with her, or a little bit.
No.
Yeah.
But
because I did have a dog like that, and I thought I just wasn't a good trainer.
Yeah.
There was a little bit of that too.
No, but 10 years with the same dog, it was like Groundhog Day.
Well, I feel like that's a German Shepherd now after having a Malinois, to be totally honest with you. I feel like that's a German Shepherd where you're fighting over the same thing every single day.
The present dog I have now, you can pick up where you left off 6 months later, and he's like right there. And then I realized, my other dog was a friggin' retard.
Exactly.
Well, but this is really an important point for you guys to realize is that sometimes it's not the dog, sometimes it's not the owner, and sometimes it's the working relationship. And it sounds like for you guys, like you are her perfect match and she is your perfect match.
Yeah, like I would not change anything about this dog.
Yeah.
And I'm not like that.
Well, that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, that really is.
Like my other dogs, I could have a list. And you'd be like, oh, my God, I've seen that dog. That's a nice dog. And I'm like, well, just being honest. Like,
this is what I would like differently.
But kind of like what Jess alluded to with me, you also were perfecting your own handling, training with all these German Shepherds and all these other dogs. So by the time this one came along, you were ready also for a higher performance dog.
Absolutely. Like, and that's the thing. 5 years ago, me and her wouldn't have got the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, like my last dog, it was a German Shepherd, super nice dog, super drive, super everything. He taught me about competing at higher level competitions, and that's a lot more. It's a
different
big
ball
difference.
Game. It's a big difference.
Yeah, going out there at a club trial
and
going to a national and feeling like you can't see anymore.
Yeah.
Like
No,
as you
it's
step
true.
on the field. Yeah, like
no more voice.
Yeah,
You literally can't talk.
So and that each dog is going to teach you new stuff if you want to learn from it.
Yeah.
But like I said, 5 years ago, it wouldn't have been the perfect dog for me.
Yeah.
But where I am right now, she's everything.
Yeah.
You know, the other thing that's nice about that, Andy, with your own experience and my experience is that in the beginning, I was taking other people's advice about what the right dog was for me, for this sport.
Yeah.
And I was getting dogs that were too hard.
Yeah.
I mean, and I was training with trainers that were very hard. You need a hard dog and all this stuff. And it was like a lot of beating my head against the wall, and competing and passing trials became my biggest goal rather than being competitive. Right. It was like, oh, we passed.
Right.
Great. And I did that with, a few dogs. And then this last dog, we actually were, my training was getting better.
And he
Jess was
need a dog
giving
that
me
was as
some
hard.
good tips. On,
Right.
Like she would watch me, and instead of saying, you got to be harder, she'd be saying, you got to be a little more thoughtful.
Maybe you should have rewarded
Yeah,
that.
be a
Your
little more
dog was-
Oh, it sounds like you got a little bit of a Jess in your ear too.
And,
Let's touch on that real quick since you're here and we're doing all this and Bridget couldn't be here. You and Bridget train together
Yes.
quite frequently, right?
Yeah.
And that is I just want to speak to that from a couple's perspective. That's not an easy thing to do, but if done properly, it can be poetic, right?
Yeah, I mean, she's what I'm not, or what I wasn't.
Yeah.
And, if anyone...
She helped you become who you were.
Yes, if anyone is a trainer that has done that I picked up the most from, it's 100% her.
Yeah.
And, obviously we're different people. We'll still you're doing this wrong and you're doing this wrong. Like, oh, really?
It's not that there's no conflict.
Yeah, I know how to have a dog sit. That's it. But thanks for the help, But, it's having that extra set of eyes. It's having that person that truly wants the best for you and your dog and everything else, like telling you stuff that you may not want to hear.
Yeah.
But, also just in the foundation work, everything like that. There's not anyone I've taken more from, but it's also someone, we obviously live together, we work together, and we do all of our
together.
Right, but we do all of our hobbies together too.
I know, it's a lot of together.
Yeah, it's we're there all the time, and but it's still all perfect. I wouldn't want it any other way. That's what we.
Well, that's what I tell Jess all the time.
No, and I just wanted to point to that because you guys are in a unique situation, and they do more than us. They have goats and horses and stuff. But, it is a lot of 24/7. Adding competition to the mix is different. We've been out of the competition scene, Scott and I, for a while. We may not go back. But I just want to point to that. You can have mutual respect with, partnership and a training relationship and everything else. Just know that it can happen.
And I know, when I saw Bridget healing, whenever I see Bridget healing one of her dogs, I know, well, that's where Andy learned how to heal.
Yeah, no,
she's got some great obedience.
It's silly. It's not even fair to the rest of the world. You see this little puppy and it's 5 months old and it's, off leash attention healing better than some dogs that you're seeing in championships. Yeah. And you're like, that's not fair. Yeah. And then, you always have the different training perspectives of how much you're supposed to do with a puppy and do you burn them out and any of that stuff. And, if you're not that great, yeah, you certainly can. But
Yeah.
if you can read a dog, that's
If the dog
not,
is pushing you,
Yeah.
like what else you got? And you just
yeah,
keep going.
like and that's what she has with every dog, and it's like I said, it's just not fair. Like
nice.
when she's training this stuff, and there'll be times I'm watching, and like, oh, I wouldn't do that. It doesn't look that good. And then a day later, it's like better than anything I've ever done before.
You're like, all right, I'm going to try it.
Yeah,
I'm going to try it just once.
yeah, like, and that seems to be how it goes all the time. And I mean, foundation-wise for young dogs and puppies and everything like that, the way she raises them, like to me, there just isn't anyone better at it.
Yeah.
Which makes it all the harder to let these puppies go off to homes where they don't get worked and they
Absolutely, and
or don't get worked well.
right, a big part of doing what I've done with her is the hopes of, okay, now we have a dog that everyone's seen, everyone wants a puppy from, and now I have a better pool that I'm pulling from
Yes.
for the puppies to
Yes.
go to,
Sure.
and that's huge. Like,
Yeah.
If I never showed her, it's the same dog.
Yep.
It's the same
true.
genetics.
And you made the right choice to do what you,
you
did
know,
in the order you did. Yeah.
And honestly, the titles don't mean anything to me.
No, I know, yeah.
Like there's people where you need to title your dog before you breed. Like that's not me at all.
Mm-hmm.
But if I didn't get those, if I didn't show in those events, I don't have a place.
Well, you're showing her trainability, her courage, everything in the. I mean, that's
Right,
originally
like-
what it was all about.
And the
Right,
level of
you know,
her
the-
genetics and who deserves to own them.
Yeah, I can train a dog a couple times, and honestly, I feel like I have a pretty good idea, like yay or nay when it comes to breeding.
Yeah.
So like the titling for me isn't that part of it, but if the dog isn't being worked and shown, like who's buying those puppies?
Yeah, I
now
know.
we're back into the, oh yeah, my dog would do great living on your couch. Like
yeah. No,
while
I
you're
understand.
working for
Yeah.
12 hours a
Yeah.
day,
No, I
that's the
understand.
kind of buyer you need at that point.
Yeah. No, it's true.
Whereas with her, there's, a longer list than I want to deal with.
Yeah.
that are looking for a puppy.
Yeah, I'm sure. Let her come up on your leg real quick, just so everyone actually
Christie.
knows she's here. Come on,
Come on.
show everyone that you
She's
actually exist
sleeping.
here.
Come on.
She's actually here. She's the sweetest dog. I'm privileged now that we even got to meet her. I'm so glad that you came. Thank you so much, Andy, for everything that you and Bridget and Emma even and Sean do for the dog world. Honestly, you really are like a fundamental place in New England that we say like they're solid people. If you need help, go. So check out Fox Hill Canine. Anything else that we need to mention, honey, about Christie or Andy or anything?
I'm ready to get my name on the list.
Oh my
And
God.
she told me.
Oh, we're getting a divorce in 2023.
Yeah, she said if you get another Malinois, we're getting a freaking divorce.
All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining us all of 2022. Andy, thank you so much for your time. I hope you find
Thanks
the
for coming,
perfect
Andy.
female
No
that you're
problem.
looking for out of your heart female, and she is an awesome dog, guys. Have a great New Year's Eve. Be super safe, and in the meantime, keep it quirky. We'll see you in 2023, guys. Thanks so much.
The views and opinions expressed by the hosts, guests, or callers of this program do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the Studio 21 Podcast Cafe, the United Podcast Network, its partners, or affiliates.